Hey all, here OS Reviews. You're watching our hands-on review of the Woozik S29. This is a wireless Bluetooth speaker that sells for just 40 bucks. Now what makes it interesting really is its design. All of this company's speakers, at least the majority of their Bluetooth models, are in the same shape. It's a cylinder and it has a strap built on in, which makes it easier to tote around or travel with. And they're always horizontally positioned so that it lies flat on a surface. Now this one here also claims to have a built-in subwoofer. Now I'm not sure if it's a passive radiator or a true subwoofer, but it claims to be 4 inches, so I'm expecting it to have more bass than the typical Bluetooth speaker for under 40 bucks. Otherwise, it has a 1,800 milliamp hour capacity battery, which should last for over 10 hours or so, and on the side here we have some additional specs. Initial impressions would be it's a lot larger than I was really expecting. You can see how on a table here it takes up quite a bit of space. It's definitely not a small or a mini Bluetooth speaker, but rather I would say a party-sized unit. Definitely fills up a smaller room without any problems at all. For size comparison, we just reviewed the BenQ Trivolo S, which is more of an audiophile grade hi-fi Bluetooth speaker, but you can see how much smaller this thing is in comparison. In the box, we also have a quick user's guide in addition to an auxiliary cable if you want to use it as a wired unit without using Bluetooth, and there's also a micro USB cable for charging the speaker. It takes about 3 to 4 hours to completely charge it. Another interesting thing about its design is obviously the synthetic leather construction here. It looks very distinctive. Now the sides here are actually made of a soft touch rubber material. It looks like aluminum, but it's rubber, so it doesn't slide around as easily on a surface, and the weight also isn't quite as heavy as you think. And on the side is where we see the controls. Woozik logo, a micro SD card if you want to insert a memory card preloaded with music, it can play it back. Micro USB for power, the auxiliary input, volume controls, you can also skip track, play pause. Now this is also not meant to be the most rugged speaker in the world, which is hinted at because of the use of the leather material, but it's not waterproof. You can see none of the ports here are covered up, so just make sure you don't get it wet and it should be fine. Before we dive into the audio test, there are two things I want to point out. Now, one feature I didn't mention is it has a FM radio built in as well, which is actually pretty cool. So if you are listening to just some stations over the air, it does work if you're in a relatively open area. You can tap on the mode key once more, and it goes into the fourth function, which is playing back radio. Second of all, the LED light is just turned on by default. You can see here it's blue. It works better if you have kind of the lights dimmed here, and it makes for a pretty interesting effect. It's slowly breathing. It isn't an LED flashlight, so it's not meant as kind of an outdoor speaker slash torch combination, something to point out. And the other side here does not have that LED light, so it is coming out from the side with the control panel, making this a little bit easier to access when you're in the dark and still find these keys. Takeaway observations would be bass is very impressive. This is definitely a very commercial sounding speaker, so anything like pop music, EDM music, also movies and TV shows where there's a lot of action sequences, you definitely hear it thump, rattle, and kind of shake the surface of the room. Second of all, it really gets super loud. In fact, I think this is one of the loudest speakers I've tried in a form factor here that is still considered portable. So we were at about 80% volume there. It filled up this entire space without any problems. I was almost taken aback when I first turned it on and it was saying Bluetooth on pairing just because of how loud it is. Otherwise, I would say the quality of the sound is also better than expected. Even though it's super loud, it doesn't seem to distort as much as I was expecting. Even at those higher volumes you heard, it was still quite clean. It didn't get screechy in terms of the treble. The bass was still quite precise. So overall, it's very balanced. And because the drivers are so far apart, it really is like a pillow here, the left and right channels are very distinct. So if you are listening to a track that's been recorded with multiple microphones and an object is moving across the screen from one side to the other, you can hear that transition just very obviously. Otherwise, it's not going to be the most hi-fi or audiophile grade speaker in the world. Again, just comparing it because the last speaker we reviewed was the BenQ Travolo S, which I don't think is the most fair comparison because they're advertised for a very different type of people. But one difference that you will hear is if you turn the volume all the way down on this unit, there's definitely a bit more of a white noise, a slight hiss in the background, just like any other Bluetooth speaker. And especially at this price, $40, it's easily forgivable. Playing and pausing the track also works alright. Sometimes it cuts in a bit more abruptly, and occasionally when you tap on play, there is kind of a split-second delay before it pops on. But in general, it stays synced with the video pretty well. So overall, I'd say for the price, it definitely is an excellent wireless Bluetooth speaker. Really punches beyond its price and its weight, I would say. Just really delivers so much volume that it's super surprising, and also does it in a surprisingly stylish form factor. So for something for sharing some casual music, for using for parties, to fill up an entire room without any problems, watching the occasional movie or TV show, this is definitely a model to consider if you don't want to spend a ton of money. So this is the Woozik S29. Thanks for watching here at OS.